In a world bruised by loss and silence, one man rises from the ashes of his past to rebuild not just a place, but a purpose. Beneath the ashes, The Rise of Aidan Hale is a story about the quiet resilience that shapes heroes, and the hope that flickers, then blazes, when we choose to begin again. This is not just a tale of survival, but of creation, transformation, and the quiet power of never giving up. The fire that consumed most of Orwin wasn't the beginning. Not really. The beginning, if you asked Aidan Hale, was the day he lost his voice, not the one used to speak, but the one that used to whisper dreams into his heart. Before the fire, Aidan was a craftsman with calloused hands and silver-flecked eyes, known in his village as the Maker. He built with wood, stone, and silence. What he lacked in words he poured into the things he shaped: clocks with dancing gears, delicate carvings that told stories without sound, benches so graceful they seemed to breathe. But tragedy is rarely dramatic when it arrives. It crept in slowly: his father's illness, then his mother's fading memory, followed by a brutal winter that stripped the town bare. Then came the fire, a single spark carried on the wind from a carelessly tended hearth, and in the span of one night, Orwin was reduced to embers. Aidan survived. His hands didn't. His fingers, once nimble and precise, were now stiffened by burns and trembled at the cold. The villagers scattered, the forge was gone, and so was the quiet purpose that had once filled his soul. For many months he wandered, the weight of failure pressing against his spine like a pack too full to bear. He became a shadow in towns that didn't know his name. In a fog-draped valley far from Orwin, Aidan found shelter in an abandoned chapel long forgotten by time. Ivy claimed its pillars, and the pews wept dust, but the roof held, and the walls remembered warmth. There, surrounded by stillness, he began to listen, not to the world outside, but to the spark that still pulsed quietly beneath the wreckage of who he had been. It was in this solitude that Aidan met a girl named Leora. She had been watching him from afar, curious about the man who lived with ghosts. Leora was a shepherd's daughter, but unlike most herders, she carried books instead of crooks, questions instead of commands. She visited the chapel weekly, offering bread, then conversation, then stories of her own. One day, while flipping through an old journal she'd salvaged from the village archives, she found a phrase that unsettled him. Only through surrendering to ruin can we build something that cannot be broken. He laughed bitterly. But Leora, unbothered, handed him a pencil. Then build something that's unbreakable, she said. Start with yourself. That night, Aidan stared at the pencil until dawn, unsure if his ruined hands could even hold it. But he tried. The first line he drew was crooked. The second trembled. The third had intention. He didn't realize he was crying until the page blurred. Thus began Aidan's second life, not one of noise and acclaim, but one carved gently from pain and promise. With time, he began creating again, not furniture or gears, but illustrations, symbols, visions from his mind reimagined through charcoal, ink, and persistence. What his hands couldn't carve in wood, his soul etched in paper. He drew people not as they were, but as they could be. Wounded, but rising. Lost, but luminous. Word spread of the man in the chapel whose drawings could speak. Travelers came, not for worship, but for hope. A woman who had lost her son saw in Aidan's sketches a version of herself, crying, yes, but standing. A soldier, plagued by nightmares, found solace in an image of a lantern inside a cave. A child, mute since birth, smiled at a painting of a bird learning to sing without a tongue. And slowly, the chapel was no longer abandoned. It became a sanctuary, not of religion, but of renewal. A gallery where broken people found reflections of resilience. But Aidan still struggled. He doubted himself often. He wrestled with the feeling that he was an imposter, that none of this mattered. The world was burning in different places now. Who was he to draw lines when cities turned to ash? One evening, as snow swept through the valley and the chapel flickered with candlelight, Leora returned with news. The village council of Orwyn, now rebuilding, wanted to commission a mural. A monument to what was lost, and what could be rebuilt. They wanted Aidan. He refused. He wasn't ready. The wounds were too raw. Orwyn was a graveyard. And yet, as the days passed, he found himself sketching pieces of it again. The bakery's crooked sign, the clock tower bell, his father's workbench. Memory was no longer an enemy. It was a blueprint. He returned in spring. Orwyn was scarred, yes, but alive. Children played near half-raised homes, laughter blooming amid scaffolding. Aidan stood before the burned town hall wall, now reinforced with stone, and for the first time in years, lifted a brush. He painted not what was, but what could be. The mural spanned the entire wall. Rising from ashes were hands, dozens of them, reaching, building, lifting each other. Trees growing from cracks in the earth. A river of light flowing between faces. At the center, a broken man kneeling, his palms to the sky, not in defeat, but in offering. It took 3 months. When it was done, the entire village stood before it, silent. Many cried. Children traced its lines with their fingers. Elders whispered prayers without words. Aidan stood in the back, unsure what to do with the attention. That's when Leora touched his shoulder and said, "You've become what you were always meant to be, not a maker of things, but a maker of meaning." Years passed. The chapel in the valley became an art school, where young dreamers came not just to draw or write, but to find strength through expression. Aidan never reclaimed the hands he once had, but he gained something better, vision, tempered through trial, that could see beauty in ruins and power in gentleness. He often told his students this. Hope isn't loud. It whispers. And every time you choose to answer, every time you pick up the pen again or return to the canvas or stand up after falling, hope grows louder, until one day, it sings.
The story may be over. But maybe, something in you is still moving. If it stirred anything inside you, keep it. Share it, or stay silent. But remember, you're still here. This was Brandon's awakening. A voice that maybe awakened something you forgot. See you in the next story.